Dr. Mark Rutland, how are you doing?
Hello, Randy. Great to see you again.
It's so good to have you back.
Thank you.
Mental health is a big topic in our country, in the world. Emotional health goes along with that. You and I, as believers, would say spiritual health. Why is that important to you? Because we're here talking in large part about your new book, Courage to be Healed. Yeah? Why is that an important topic to you?
Well, in the first place, it's important in the body of Christ. I just have become discouraged at the number of people, the percentage of people that are Christians. They're very serious Christians. I'm not denying that even. But they are toxic people. They're just things that happen, relationships, families, churches that are just disrupted with this toxicity that flows out of people. And what it would be easier if you said, well, they're not real Christians. You know, something. They are Christians, but there are unresolved issues in them. Second reason it's important to me is that these are things I've struggled with in my own self. Since I was in junior high school, I've had agonizing struggles with depression on and off. The last of those struggles being 10, 12 years ago, so I feel like I'm moving through it, but I just said there's got to be some deeper, more profound answer than just go to the altar and repent again.
Yeah. Now, when you say toxic, what specifically would you put in that category? Well,
this lady sat in my office, and she's just riddled with anger. It bubbles out of her. It's volcanic, and she would tell you straight away she's a Christian. There's no, and it's important to her. She's a woman of faith, but this anger is it's corrosive. And in the counseling chamber, as I'm talking with her, I just realized she is completely out of touch with how angry she is.
She wasn't even realizing how it was coming out.
I don't think so. And I'm talking about volatile anger. And it's in her eyes, in her face, in her hands, when you're talking, about things. And that's the kind of thing I'm talking about.
I would assume that she would feel justified.
Yes. Okay, absolutely. The capacity of the human heart to rationalize and justify our own attitudes is part of the reason that we can't get healed. That's the reason for the title of the book, is the courage to be healed. Whether it's physical healing or emotional healing, what most people talk about is faith. And I'm not dismissive of faith. Faith is a variable in all healing. I just began to be convinced, and have become more convinced over the years, that the principal variable in inner healing, in the healing of damaged emotions, is not actually faith, it's actually courage. Because it takes guts to look in the mirror. We don't really want to see who we really are. What is the real problem? And that takes courage. So the whole thing is based on the man lowered through the rooftop. Okay? And you hear 1,000,000 sermons on the man lowered through the rooftop. They will all be about one of two things. The supernatural power of Jesus to heal, which is obviously a good theme, and the faith of the 4 friends who lower him through the roof, which is a good thing.
Recap the story for those who haven't heard it.
Okay, there's a man who's entirely crippled. Jesus is in a room full of people. It's packed. His friends want to get him to Jesus. They can't, so they go up on the rooftop.
Because they want to get their friend healed.
They want to get their friend healed. They have faith to believe Jesus will heal him. They're operating in faith. They tie ropes around the corners of his blanket or bedroll or whatever it is, the loosely translated bed, but it's not bed like we think. And they remove the tiles of the ceiling, and they're going to lower him right down into Jesus' presence. Okay. Jesus is powerful, the people have faith, but what about the man in the bed? At some point, Randy, it's not recorded but there had to be some point where they put the ropes on and they turn and look at him and say, okay, you ready? Now you think, that's a high-risk situation right there. What if they drop him? What if one of them lets go and he tumbles out? Also, the crowd in the room are described as doctors of the law. So what if they all, snigger and And yet another embarrassing and humiliating moment. Furthermore, we've read Luke chapter 5. Nobody on the rooftop has. So what if Jesus says, I mean, we know Jesus heals him.
Yeah.
But what if he's thinking, what if Jesus says, get that thing out of here?
Yeah. Yeah.
What are you, I'm in the middle of my teaching. Get him out of here.
Yeah.
Yet
That's
another
true.
rejection.
They were interrupting.
So
They were interrupting Jesus.
they're interrupting Jesus.
Right.
And a room full of legal scholars.
Yeah.
So it occurred to me that the real deal for that man is not actually faith. It was courage.
Yeah.
And it takes courage to be lowered into the presence of Jesus. Where you deal with, you're going to prowl back through, excavate into the innermost chambers of your heart, those deep things. Interviewed, counseled with a man for a long time, a great deal of time. The basis of his dysfunction, his family, his children, everybody, he is a toxic person because he has covered up an inner thing with a completely false narrative of his life. And the fact of the matter is, he was born to mountain people. I'm talking about like, deliverance in the hills of Kentucky. And he escaped, got out of it, went to a great school, MIT, I think, became a hugely successful person, and created this mirage story for his wife and kids that didn't even exist.
Wow.
Why? Because he was ashamed.
Shame.
I believe shame is one of the thrones of the greatest toxicity in the human spirit, is shame. The girl who's raped by her father, this guy, shame over what was done to me, or shame over what I did. Shame, unforgiveness, rejection, condemnation, and fear. Those are the 5 basic toxins. And I'm convinced that those 5 toxins in general cover everything that flows out. Why does it always go wrong at the Thanksgiving party?
Yeah.
What happens there?
Yeah.
And everybody in the room's a Christian. So what's the deal? That's what I wanted to get at.
Is it courage, or is it sometimes desperation, maybe?
That's a very good question. However, there may be a causational reality and not a correlational.
Okay.
In other words, if I am desperate enough, courage may be the child of that desperation.
Yeah.
So imagine a soldier in combat, and he sees a wounded comrade over there under fire. He is desperate to rescue him, so he acts out of his desperation. Was he desperate or was he courageous?
Right, that's what I'm saying. Yeah.
And the answer is yes.
Yeah.
So if I can get desperate enough to get healed, and that's why much Christian counseling happens in the reality of a crisis.
Yeah.
Is because that desperation. I'm about to lose my marriage. I'm about to lose my ministry. I'm about to lose my mind.
Do you think maybe that's why God lets us get into these crises?
Yeah,
Because He wants to push us to desperation and courage to come to Him to get healed?
what is the story of the prodigal son? What is that story? That's the story of someone who gradually inches his way into a desperate situation and finds the courage to return to his father.
Right.
Because he doesn't know what his father's going to say. So we keep reading these stories like everybody in them knew the outcome.
Yeah, that's true.
But he didn't. He didn't know. What if his father said, get out of here?
So for those of us who deal with people with these toxic emotions or attitudes, how do you address them?
Yeah, okay, that's dicier, isn't it?
Yeah, it is.
It's one thing to be able to look in the mirror and say, I need help.
Right.
It's another thing to hold the mirror up and say, you need help.
Right.
So what I say in this book is, in part, one of the pastoral ministries is you may not be the pastor who can counsel this person through to victory, but you can be the friend on the rooftop. You can say, look, man, we've got to get you into the presence of the wonderful counselor. Counseling, this was a big shock to me. And I don't know what circles you travel in precisely in the Christian community, but there are large elements of the Christian community that flinch at the word counseling. I told a group at one point that I had gone through counseling. And it caused a gasp.
Really?
There was a gasp in the room. I heard it. And afterward, a man came to me and he said, why did you go through counseling? You know, why did you go? I said, because I needed it. And so what I think we can say is if we can demystify, even take the toxicity away from the word counseling. You know, these angry Pentecostal evangelists on TV, you know, railing on
I have
counseling.
no idea what you're talking about.
Well, I always think the same thing. You need counseling.
Yeah, yeah.
And if we can just say, look, let's get you in the presence of wonderful counsel.
You know, most ministers who rail against something really hard, you know this, they have a problem in that area.
Exactly. That's exactly right. And the level of toxicity in the ministry is not a joke.
No,
It's killing us. It's depriving us of our ministries. It's breaking our homes and families.
It makes us look bad, too.
Well, it brings a reproach.
Right, yes. Oh, that's
It does.
right, the biblical phrase.
It's awful.
Yeah.
And a major issue is, when does a pastor, to whom does a pastor say, I need counseling?
Yeah.
You walk
You're going
in.
to lose your job. That's one way to do it for a lot of them.
Did you ever see Tennessee Williams play The Night of the Iguana? You know how it opens? It opens with a pastor who comes out of the pulpit and starts toward his congregation expressing, albeit he seems a bit mad, but he starts expressing to his congregation that he needs help. And they get up and leave. They get up and leave. They flee the room, and he's chasing them. And he winds up as a drunken tour bus operator in Acapulco. But I've wondered, when I saw it, you know, that's Tennessee Williams, but when I saw the play, I wondered, what if his congregation had not run? What if they had said, Pastor, we'll hold the ropes.
Yeah.
We'll lower you into the presence of Christ.
Yeah.
Instead, they flee. It's kind of comical, but it's kind of sad, too.
Yeah.
He's actually chasing them out the door.
Yeah. Even though there are a lot of churches where that would not happen, obviously, I think that a lot of leaders think that's what would happen.
Precisely. That's a very good point. Actually, one of the 5 toxins is fear.
Yeah.
And it is one of the things that controls us is, you know where fear rests in? I say each of these 5 toxins rests in a throne, a power, a dominion, out of which the toxic river flows. You know what the one is for fear? It's pain. Because we either remember a pain or we imagine a pain.
One.
You ever take a kid to the doctor and the nurse appears with a hypodermic needle?
And they flinch.
And they go ballistic.
Right.
Yeah. Because they create a pain which is greater than what the hypodermic will.
That's true a lot of times.
Now, psychologists tell us that you cannot actually remember a pain. You remember that it hurt. But you cannot actually recall the sensation of the pain. So therefore, you create a memory narrative, which often is greater and more controlling than the pain was itself.
Yeah, I can see that.
And that, what you're saying is right. If I say to somebody, I need help, I'm struggling with depression, if I say that, the pain that I can imagine around that happening is probably greater than what it was.
What's the remedy for that?
Well, I know it sounds like I'm selling books, but courage. There has to come that moment where I say, I've got to face this. Yeah. And I think your point is well made. And if I had talked to you before I wrote the book, I would have included desperation. but I do think courage born of desperation.
That's good. I relate more to the desperation, I think, than the courage. So that's why it comes up.
But I think it's a point well made, though, that we come to the place where we somehow, if necessity is the mother of invention, then maybe desperation is the father of courage. Yeah. And that is, I find the courage somehow to say, it can't go on like this.
Right, that's it.
I can't wait until my wife divorces me, my church fires me, and I descend into alcoholism because I'm self-medicating for the depression. I have to get this fixed. And that's when you man up.
Yeah. Good. What's the website for the people that are interested in the book? I know we can go online and buy them wherever books
All
are sold,
places
but-
books can be
but
sold.
Do you have a website for
Yeah, they can go to drmarkrutland.com or they can go to globalservants.org and find all of those, all books, all the 18 books I've ever done, hundreds and hundreds of sermons.
And they're good. I know. I'll just tell everybody that's tuning in, they're good. So
Thank you.
always so good to have you, and appreciate you opening up, giving great practical advice, and doing it right here on Life Today.
It's an honor. Good to see you, Randy.